Well, hello and welcome, everybody. Wow, a lot of stuff going on lately, isn't it? Hey, thanks so much for joining us. My name is Rob Boyd. This is the Data Center Download Series. Hopefully you guys are seeing me and you're going to see the rest of our guests here. I know from a WebEx perspective, I've not done too much of the video when it comes to these events, but we're all hoping that this makes it a bit more intimate, if you will. I want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. First and foremost, I want to make sure that we all know that we're in the right place. We are talking about Cisco HyperFlex. We're talking about scaling and supporting a remote workforce. So if for some reason that is not the journey that you wanted to be on, now is the time to exit. But if it even sounds remotely interesting, please hang on because we're going to have a good time. We've got a number of people joining us. But before I get to that, let me first cover a couple of housekeeping items, as they say. This is a live stream, obviously, so every mistake and everything that we say is coming out on an audio stream. If you're not hearing me right now, right, because you wouldn't have heard, then you need to check your audio. If you have consistent issues with audio, video, or anything else that you're concerned with that you feel like is from a platform perspective, we have an amazing WebEx producer behind the scenes. She is going to take care of that for you. All you got to do is use the Q&A panel. So the Q&A panel is really for two things. It's for some technical support if it relates to WebEx, but most importantly, it's for questions and taking advantage of the fact that we've got some engineers and some product development folks all behind the scenes, some of which are not even speaking. They're here strictly to answer your questions. They're here to make sure that this is a valuable experience. So I mentioned the issues. I mentioned the Q&A. I believe there's going to be a survey at the end. I always say that because if you don't rank highly, then they never work with me again, and that's just a bad scene overall. So please be sure and remember to pay attention to your surveys. And with that, I want to get on for some specifics on our topic. So let's look at our agenda. Guys, we're gonna cover an introduction. Everybody got that one? That's what we're in now. Okay, never mind. We've got this new remote working climate. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about where HyperFlex fits. And we're going to talk about VDI, or virtual desktop infrastructure. Now, to talk about VDI, we've got demonstrations. We're not going to just force you through slides the entire time. We've got the very intelligent Brian Hilton with us, who's going to walk us through how VDI is being used in these situations. Not any specific version of VDI. This is about how it can help you with the fact that we're all dealing with a whole new host of remote workforce challenges. But we're also going to hear from a customer. And I had a chance to pre-interview, if you will, talk with this customer, Michael Rhodes from Hoganis. Hope I'm pronouncing that name right. We'll verify all that when we get back to him. Either way, the man is amazing, and what he's done in his company, not only with VDI, but with a whole lot of different things, he's really someone we need to hold up and go, that's how we're supposed to be running these things. So he's got a lot of good ideas. We're anxious to share those. Let me jump to our first slide. So that's a picture of me from not too long ago. I'll be your host for today. My name is Rob Boyd. VJ is joining us in just a moment. I mentioned Brian Hilton covering VDI and then Michael Rhodes. But with that, let's first acknowledge this reality that we're in. And VJ, I want to go ahead and bring you on. And I think that we're pushing a poll out for just a moment. If you guys see a poll pop up, we do want to ask, how are you doing? Just give us a quick feedback. But VJ, when it comes to this reality of remote working, and it becomes, it wasn't a topic that we were necessarily ignoring or not paying attention to prior to the pandemic, but suddenly I think a lot of people have had those plans challenged, and they're doing things differently now. What is your perspective?
Yes, thank you, Rob, and good morning, everyone. Just to quickly introduce myself, Vijay Venugopal. I lead the worldwide product management for HyperFlex in the data center business unit of Cisco. Firstly, hope everyone's doing fine, doing safe wherever you are. And it is a challenging environment that we're all in. And virtual desktop in general has been very, very popular for some time. But this global pandemic, I think, has raised the attention and the need to have scalable virtual desktop infrastructure to be able to support the remote workers. Because just suddenly overnight, we had to be in an environment where workers had to be supported with the same security, the same performance than they get when they're in office. But now we need to provide the same level of security, performance, and scale when they're working from home. And IT had to suddenly, had to transform when the entire workforce was suddenly working remote. How do you support them at the same level of SLAs that they used to get previously while they were working in office? So it has become extremely challenging, and it's become almost overnight, and that's what I think that the industry has been challenged. And the fantastic thing is there are many customers that have been able to rise to that challenge because they had the right architecture and the right infrastructure in place.
Yeah, it's interesting, VJ. We're getting responses back on the poll, and it's really pretty split. I mean, not that these are real granular type of responses that we've given you to go with here, but heavily favored towards good and okay, which tells me a lot of people are right down the middle. And I imagine this is something, the answers to which, at least for me, can be something that change almost on a moment by moment basis, and depending on which news channel I might be watching. You know, these are changing times, but it's forcing us all to be more creative, not just in terms of infrastructure, but even stuff that we already have access to. How are we doing things differently? Cisco, completely moved everybody into full-time remote work, and which was not foreign to Cisco. But we also began looking at changes in scale and how people were going to meet with demand. I'm curious, you meet with a lot of different customers who are probably pushing the limits on what our gear can handle or what Cisco's gear can handle. Have you heard anything about challenges with scaling up and scaling out, and people running into just a different response necessary now with the way things have happened?
In the case of HyperFlex, that was never a problem, Rob, because the platform and the architecture was designed from the very beginning to scale, scale very efficiently. And we've got customers, that range from very small enterprises that may be running 50 or 100 users or virtual desktops to very, very large enterprises that are running at the order of 30,000 virtual desktops in a data center, right? So we've got a whole range of customers, and I'll give you the example of one very large IT services organization in the Asia Pacific region. And when the moment the COVID pandemic hit, I believe this was early February timeframe, when we suddenly got a panic call from, and I think they have about 100,000 users across the world. And they made an early decision that they want the entire company to be supported on remote as remote workers. And we got a panic call from them saying they were already using HyperFlex as their virtual desktop platform, and they wanted to be able to scale instantaneously. And so they reached out to us, and we helped them get gear out, get it installed, get the entire infrastructure stood up. And they went from something like 10,000 users to something like 50,000 users in a 2-week period time. So it was fantastic how quickly they were able to get this going. But it's a great example of how a platform, because the underlying platform has been designed to be scalable. But these are the questions that an infrastructure team or an IT team is asking them. When a customer is using a traditional desktop and they move to a virtual desktop, the first question is, will the performance suffer? Will their efficiency drop? Because you want your workforce to be as efficient when they're working remotely as they are when they are, at the office. So that's kind of the first question that they ask. The second is, as the number of users that are working from home, as that increases, how quickly or efficiently can you scale? The third and one of the most important questions that a lot of people are worried about is, what about the security? Right now, what the beauty of virtual desktop is that the data and the virtual machines of the virtual desktop are all hosted in the secure data center. So the data is protected. It's behind firewalls. It could be behind VPNs, but that data is completely secure. Now, there are other types of desktop as a service capabilities that are running in other locations, possibly in public clouds. But security is a big concern, right? Because then you don't have any control over that, and you have to set up very separate security policies to manage data that are sitting outside your premises. So the advantage of doing VDI in data centers is because it's all in the premise, completely secure within your IT environment, and that's one of the biggest concerns. And lastly, from an IT professional's point of view, they're worried is how will they manage all this sitting at home? Right? And so remote management is an equally important part of the problem, because it's not just about supporting the remote worker, it's about now supporting the remote administrator, which is a big problem in itself, which needs to be solved. How are you as an IT professional being efficient? Are you able to do every single thing that you want to, provide the SLA to your customers while sitting at home remotely?
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that when we talk about remote worker, that's obviously there's a very important role that serves as a foundation for all of this. When you talk about remote management and what things have to change and being prepared for that, because to a certain extent, this is the same thing I think you've probably been saying for years in terms of all the same things that a business has needed prior to everything happening. Were still important then, they're just maybe even more important now. And as we were talking offline, they're being not exposed, maybe, but certainly tested in a different way when suddenly you've got to do things different. And I'll just remind everybody in a moment, we're going to go into some deep dive on VDI. And specifically, Brian's going to take us through a demonstration of how these things are working and how you might incorporate them in your own environment. But before we get there, Vijay, I just wonder if I could just have you put on your sales hat for just a moment and make sure we're all on the same page with regard to hyper-converged infrastructure, and then specifically to HyperFlex as we go through this. And if I know we've got a couple of slides set up here. If I don't move the slides fast enough for you, tell me to move them, and I'll catch back up with you. But I wonder if we could just spend a couple of slides here, make sure we're all well-grounded on the foundation with HyperFlex.
Yeah, it's always good to start with a basic product introduction for folks on the call or on the webinar who may not be fully familiar with HyperFlex. So very quick summary is HyperFlex is Cisco's market-leading hyperconverged infrastructure solution. It's extremely high performance, built on the foundation of Cisco's UCS server foundation. And we've got a very scalable data platform, a software-defined data platform that provides all of the storage capabilities for the hyperconverged solution. In effect, creating a cloud platform. Think of it like a cloud in your premise or a private cloud, completely enabled through a software-defined architecture. And this is a market-leading platform. It's been ranked as leaders in the category by both Gartner and Forrester. And at the end of last year, CRN ranked HyperFlex as the #1 hyperconverged product in the world. So just a market-leading, highly scalable platform that is capable of delivering any application, any performance, and that can be managed from anywhere. Now, Rob, if you can just go to the next slide, I'd just like to double-click on that. Because remember, I made the point about how do you scale? Because one of the things, especially in these times when the number of users are scaling very rapidly, the question that I always get asked is, how do you scale? And one of the biggest advantages of HyperFlex architecture is that the ability for us to scale in multiple dimensions. So you can either scale by adding capacity within a particular node. If you need more capacity, you can add more nodes, and the nodes can be either converged nodes or it could be compute nodes. You can take any UCS server and add capacity. It doesn't even have to be a HyperFlex server. And many times these are GPU-activated workloads. So when you have GPU-activated VDI, when you want high-performance graphics or even for things like Windows 10 users, you can add GPUs both in the servers themselves, in the hyperconverged nodes, or in the blades or rack servers. Or we've created these dense GPU nodes as well, which we call GPU-only nodes, and you can attach them. So there's a lot of flexibility available. And all of this fits within the overall data center architecture, which could be converged infrastructure or hyperconverged. At the end of the day, this is a highly performant architecture that's capable of providing protected, resilient, high-performance data centers for any types of mission-critical workloads.
Sound like a pause to go to the next slide. I'll jump there. Is that all right?
You are spot on cue, Rob. So where I wanted to go next was talk a little bit about Intersight. So Cisco Intersight is Cisco's market-leading management as a service platform. Think of it as management in the cloud or management as a service for the infrastructure platforms. Now, one of the challenges that I talked about previously was how do you make management of your infrastructure easy, especially in this environment where you can't even access your data centers. You may not be able to go into the labs or the data centers, and you're working from home. So we built Intersight, several years ago, even way before there was even a hint of this pandemic around. But it was designed with the vision that you should be able to manage the data center from anywhere. You can manage it from the office, you can manage it from home, you can manage it from a train, you can manage it on your mobile device. You should be able to manage your infrastructure from anywhere. And we built out a very intelligent management platform that's capable of managing infrastructure, which could be in the data center, out in a remote location, in an edge location, any of these locations. And it scales extremely well. It can scale to hundreds of thousands of sites per customer, all managed from a single interface. And it has got it's got a lot of intelligent capabilities beyond the ability to just manage the infrastructure. We collect a lot of telemetry and we run algorithms and analytics on that to provide some intelligence back to you, so you can do something actionable with that. Recommendations, automated support, lots of intelligent capabilities that we built in that really transforms how you manage infrastructure. So now you have the assurance that you could stay at home in the midst of any crisis and you can continue to provide the same levels of management as if you were sitting on the console in your data center.
Let me ask you a quick question on that, Vijay. I don't think you covered it here, but if I'm a UCS or a HyperFlex customer already, I believe, can I not sign up for Intersight at no cost and actually get some benefit from simply just kind of participating in the crowd-based knowledge, so to speak?
Absolutely. So if you are using a UCS M4 or M5 or a HyperFlex M4 or M5 system, it is a no-cost, zero-cost license to get started with Intersight. So we have the Intersight-based license that's available at no cost just to get started and started using it. Now, depending on the capabilities that you need, there are higher tiers of licenses, but the base license is absolutely free for any customer that wants to use Intersight.
Excellent, everybody. So just be aware, there's no excuse for not trying Intersight out because I think it'll surprise you. There's zero barrier to entry with regards to the value that it can start providing. And then if you see value in it and you want more value, then you can scale up from there. So final question here, Vijay, around the ecosystem. This becomes important. Nothing is on an island, so to speak, when it comes to networking and how we're providing these resources. I wonder if you could give me an idea of how we're supporting that.
Yeah, so the first thing is that we support a very broad range of applications. We're going to focus today on virtual desktop, and we support both Citrix XenApp XenDesktop as well as VMware Horizon. But there's a whole host of other enterprise applications, SAP, SQL, Oracle. There are so many emerging workloads like container-based workloads, multi-cloud workloads. So we've got a very broad range of applications and workloads that support the customer journey wherever they are. But the focus of today is really on supporting the remote worker, and the most important solution when it comes to remote workers is virtual desktop. And so I'll hand it over back to you, Rob, to transition to the deep dive on virtual desktop.
Yeah, perfect. Vijay, I do want you to hang out if you can. We've got other question managers behind the scenes. I apologize, guys, with the camera on, I feel that much more pressure not to stare at the Q&A. So I'm actually not paying close attention to that, and I'm counting on the fact that the experts there are handling everything you've got. But please keep it up because that's what the value is about in a live situation. If you're watching the recording of this, there's multiple ways to reach out to us. You can always reach out to me on Twitter, and I'll make sure you get to the right resource at the very least. But just a reminder on the agenda as working through this. In just a moment, we're going to talk to Brian Hilton on VDI. But we've got a customer. Michael Rhodes is going to be wrapping it all up for us. And I haven't been this excited about a customer in quite a while, and I think you're going to enjoy everything already that's been discussed. Has already been proven, and more so in the wild with what Michael has been doing for his company. So with that, I'll just leave that as a tease. But Brian, I want to bring you on to talk a little bit more detail about VDI. I'll switch over here, and I'll just start it with the first question because this has been informative for me just in prepping for this and talking to you about the consideration for VDI. What does it mean now, perhaps more than ever before? And with that, I think we're also going to hand the ball over to you. I'll let you drive and start walking us through this, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rob. And great job, Vijay. That was an incredible overview. I loved a lot of the topics that you brought up, definitely applicable to today. Literally, many organizations found themselves working from home literally overnight, right? Most employees likely left the office on Tuesday, fully expecting to make a commute the next day into the office on Wednesday morning. And most business continuity plans didn't involve really a design for a 100% remote worker strategy, right? Now organizations have been scrambling to enable their employees to continue their business functions during this challenging time. And the dust will settle. This is not going to happen forever, right? Businesses will go back to the way that they were. And how is the impact of what happened today going to change those business continuity plans moving forward? Are the businesses going to allow their end users to continue to remotely work from home offices or other avenues of doing their business functions? There's a paradigm shift, if you will, for the way that end users are going to start consuming technology. There's a lot of statistics that are being generated as a result of this, just how companies are adapting to this challenge, right? Just thinking in that right-hand example of, the dog being quiet, sitting on the floor, that really never happens. I'm actually shocked my dog hasn't barked during this session.
It's when you start talking, isn't it? That's what happens to me is that I'm all quiet. And usually if I'm not even sorry, I'm interrupting, but on a call, I love talking about my dog. I'm talking in the speech to text, and I'm trying to teach the dog when I'm doing speech to text that's not him.
Right.
We're still working on that.
Exactly. Exactly. And, that's just one of the challenges, right? There's a lot of funny stories going on out, you can read about in social media and things like that about people's remote experience today. But, moving into the technology realm, customers are now like, what if we did really enable VDI as an option for those remote workers? What does that look like? What are some of the key things that we need to be considering as part of that deployment strategy? There's a lot of benefits to VDI that have been recognized throughout the years that it's been successful, right? You have simplified image management as one of the major benefits. If you're deploying physical desktops today, they're likely disparate hardware types, and customers have to maintain different images for those hardware types. You'll have to have drivers for, different display adapters, different peripherals, if you will. And it gets to be a challenge in large organizations. There was a recent, I believe it was a study by Deloitte that found that the average U.S. household has about 11 internet-connected devices, right? If you're considering VDI, that does enable the BYOD strategy to be a little bit more secure. Your help desk in a situation like this wouldn't have to go out and visit, users' homes and to troubleshoot corporately owned assets, or they wouldn't have to have any downtime, if you will, from end users trying to remotely work if, a corporately owned asset were to have a challenge. They could repurpose their existing desktops in the house. There's a lot of considerations that kind of go into play with that, right? As we look to helping our customers with this challenge, we wanted to say, okay, well, there's really two scenarios that customers are considering today. You have your greenfield scenario where customers weren't doing virtual desktops. They didn't have some type of virtual desktop offering. And then you had your brownfield scenario that had, a VDI practice, but it wasn't designed to handle 100% concurrency, right? 100% of the remote workers being able to leverage that virtual desktop platform. So, when we look at both scenarios, customers have to evaluate, being able to scale efficiently. A lot of the topics that Vijay mentioned were so relevant to VDI. You have to be able to consider not just, compute resources like CPU and RAM and potentially GPU, but you have to also include the storage and the network as part of that solution stack. And it has to be simple to manage. You can get really complex in your VDI designs, and you can make things, tuned specific to your environment, right? But at the end of the day, you want it to be simple. You want it to be easily consumable, and you want your end users to have the best experience they can. So when we went to market with being able to address both of those scenarios, we said, okay, well, let's start off with about 500 users, a traditional knowledge worker profile, if you will. There's different end user types when you start to consider VDI. Knowledge workers, a pretty good roundabout way to position a remote worker. Again, you're going to layer a desktop virtualization platform on top of the infrastructure. Again, we partner with Citrix and VMware to handle the remoting protocol, if you will. And then also for higher end knowledge workers, we want to open up the opportunity for them to have a more graphics enhanced experience. And we partner with NVIDIA to handle the virtual GPU aspects for those graphics enhanced knowledge worker scenarios. Any questions on that right now, Rob? Or?
I do have, I have one question, and I was just curious. It occurred to me when you were talking about some people, the term VDI, of course, been around for a long, long time. And kind of like video conferencing in that everybody has a different experience, and sometimes that experience may be based on a previous attempt. Maybe they worked for a company 10 years ago that went gung-ho after VDI, and so they're negative about it. And maybe this will come up in your demonstration, but have you found that people, it seems to me, successful VDI implementations, usually you forget you're on VDI. The remote worker doesn't have to be so concerned with it. Everything just kind of works, and it works in a way that they expect. Is that where we are today in terms of the end user experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Historically, VDI was about trying to really optimize the cost per user and, be able to optimize the desktop to a point where the user was able to just do their business functions, if you will. The user didn't really care about the performance of the desktop, and the experience wasn't something that was really a target use case, right? But the end user environments have changed, the applications have changed. Even the OS itself has changed. Windows 10 has a significant amount more resource requirements than, say, traditional Windows 7 deployments. A lot of the things that we could tune in Windows 7 for VDI, are built into the OS itself, and we can't really make those tuning adjustments that we did in Windows 7 to optimize that image as efficiently. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. Being able to handle the change in the applications, being able to handle the change in the OS, and give the end user that optimal experience so that they're completely agnostic as to whether they are on a laptop, desktop, or a virtual machine is critical.
Well, as you're moving on here, just one quick reminder, don't forget that Rick asked you in the Q&A about covering zero and thin clients.
Yes, that's a great question.
Work that into the appropriate place. I don't want to leave Rick hanging, because then he's going to be like...
Yeah, we can absolutely cover that now. So, when you're considering how to enable the endpoint at the desk, a lot of customers will possibly repurpose their existing desktop or laptop that the end user has, trying to sweat out the equity in that resource. If they are considering zero clients or thin clients, some of the main considerations are around the protocol that you're going to support. So I'll give you an example. A lot of zero client considerations today are around PC over IP, which is Teradata protocol, supported by VMware. And, when you look at a thin client, it has a little bit more robust hardware behind the scenes for additional peripheral support as well. So it really depends on your end user's consumption of the virtual machine. So you got to think about the number of monitors that you're going to support, what type of peripherals you're going to support at the desk, some of the security considerations, a lot of the thin client manufacturers today have really enhanced some of the security software that they offer on top of the management aspects of the thin clients and zero clients. So it really boils down to, what protocol are you going to select? Is the thin client or zero client going to support that protocol, and what peripherals are at the end user's desk?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, move along to your next thing here. I'm going to re-ask that question, potentially remind Michael, our guest customer, to reflect on that a little bit, and I assume he's watching the Q&A, but Rick had also added not only a thank you, but also just a little bit more context, and that his question was also targeted, he's thinking of federal government users, and where they'd work in that one. So we'll come back to your questions. We're still answering them textually. I don't want to make you think, everybody, that we're doing these all verbally. I'm just mentioning it because it's good, actually, and I'm learning as we go along here. But yeah, please continue.
Awesome. So as we dive a little bit deeper into the sizing of the bundles that we have defined, again, the knowledge worker we chose more for that heavy Office 365 use case. Medium to lightweight browser usage. There's some websites that have some pretty ad-sensitive requirements. Also, I've seen some video conferencing applications drive some pretty robust requirements for VDI. This was more tailored for your traditional knowledge worker that's not really doing a lot of content production. They're doing traditional business apps through web-based applications and office productivity type situations. The virtual hardware that we specified is essentially 2 virtual CPUs, 4 gigs of reserved memory, a 40 gig OS, giving 15 gigs of user data, so things like that users would save in My Documents or save to their desktop. I'm laughing because I was thinking about some end user experience challenges in the past about customers saving items to their desktop. And then also the resiliency factor. The 4-node cluster that we have identified for the 500-seat configuration supports a replication factor of 3, so the data lives on at least 3 nodes within the cluster at any given point. We do have N+1 tolerance built into the cluster and the sizing as well, so that if you do need to have a host taken down for a maintenance window, if you're wanting to upgrade memory within the environment, do some additional patching or maintenance to that hypervisor, we do support that as well. And then we also offer the ability to scale the compute resources or the hyperconverged resources within those clusters with 100-seat add-on nodes, if you will. So we do have compute-only nodes and hyperconverged nodes that are included as additional bundle options with the solution. So it gives the customers a lot of opportunity to choose the environment that's best suited for their deployment. So one of the things I also want to speak to is our business unit, our solutions business unit focused on VDI has published a CVD, or a Cisco Validated Design Navigator, if you will. So basically what that gives customers the opportunity to do is they can go to this website, cisco.com/go/VDI-CVD, and they can choose the deployment that they are looking to take advantage of. So, for our example, we leverage HyperFlex as a platform. You can see that there's, by that filter alone, there's 17 results. We can go much further and more granular, so we can choose, the hypervisor they're looking to deploy, which brokering technology they're looking to take advantage of, the number of seats they're looking to deploy, and what this results in is a really robust blueprint for customers and partners to follow and see the best practices outlined by both our Cisco business unit as well as Citrix and VMware's best practices for VDI in those various scenarios.
Yeah, there's amazing documentation. I'm a big fan of the CVDs because I've seen the network builds that go behind these. These are not. This is not a merging of marketing papers so that it becomes one way to integrate several different technologies. This is actually, let's build it out and document the process, including maybe even some things you wouldn't have thought of to help prevent and keep you from making the same mistake twice, which I think is always helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. You always want to make mistakes once, right?
Or don't make the mistake. Yeah, or don't make the mistake the first time. Yeah. That's what I meant to do. Yeah.
All right. So one thing that was mentioned earlier is Intersight. So we do include, as part of the bundling, 180 days of Intersight for supporting that remote worker situation. So let's do a quick screen share.
Yeah, here we go.
Here we go. Demo time, always fun.
And there's a question when you get a moment, work this in. I don't know if actually this is a full question or not, but Ed writes, question on HCI nodes and compute-only nodes. I don't know if you're looking for a compare and contrast.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Vijay mentioned earlier that we have the ability to scale compute-only nodes within HyperFlex. So what that does is it allows customers who may be CPU or memory constrained within their cluster, but they may have plenty of capacity to land those virtual desktops on within the cluster. The ability to scale using compute-only nodes, which do not require additional hyperconverged licensing or anything of that nature. You don't have to, add additional storage spend when you don't need storage, right? You're addressing the demand of the cluster, not necessarily being limited by the hardware that you're going to add to the cluster. So that's a great question. So essentially, you have compute-only nodes, which have basically CPU RAM and optionally GPU resources if you're running out of GPU resources, as well as hyperconverged nodes, which have the compute GPU storage included in that node itself. And then you can also scale the storage within the node. So if you started off with 6 drives from a capacity perspective and you are running low on capacity, you can just add drives to those existing hyperconverged nodes within the cluster.
Okay.
Great question.
So, yeah. Ed, thank you for the clarification in your question there, too. That's asking about storage capacity on every node, or just need them and use only with GPUs as necessary. And you're saying that you've got the ability to scale this distinctly, which is also a distinct part of what HyperFlex provides.
Absolutely.
If I'm interpreting correctly. Okay. Excellent. On with the demo, and we'll come back to more questions as well. And thank you. Michael Rhodes has been answering questions in there, too, who I haven't introduced yet. So, guys, you're just going to have to wait because he's our customer and he's amazing. But anyway, he's already gracing us with his knowledge. But, let's keep going. This is fun. Thank you.
Yeah. We're just going to quickly go through this. I definitely want to transition over to Michael's content because I'm really excited to hear from him as well. But basically what you're seeing on your screen is Intersight, and this is a dashboard view of Intersight. So when you first log into Intersight, you're going to be presented with a unique dashboard, unique to your login. Every user that logs in can create their own custom dashboard with different widgets based on what's applicable to their role within an organization. In this scenario, we're saying that essentially you just received HyperFlex, you've given the IMC, the management piece of the server an IP address, and basically you've claimed it in Intersight. So basically it is now been added, the servers have been added to Intersight for consumption. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on Service Profiles, okay, and then we're going to create a HyperFlex cluster from Intersight. Okay, this is just an example of what we would see on the ability to name that HyperFlex cluster, which HyperFlex platform you want to deploy. So in this example, it's 3.5.1a. There is a drop-down box here that will give you flexibility to align that with whatever you currently have if you already have an environment on-prem. So we're going to go ahead and click Next. And then if you're familiar with UCS, you're familiar with a policy-driven model. So very similar to UCS, we have a policy-driven model within HyperFlex. And you can create these policies so that you can share those policies as a result of these cluster settings. So some of the main things that you want to start, adding to your cluster is of course, the security aspects. You want to be able to configure, the hypervisor password, what your controller VM password will be, who's going to be the hypervisor admin. You're also going to go in and configure the DNS settings that are applicable to where that HyperFlex cluster is deployed. So you can choose the time zone, what DNS servers you want it to talk to, NTP servers, things of that nature. Again, since we build this on top of vCenter, we do give the option for putting in the vCenter information and going ahead and adding the cluster to vCenter. Within the storage configuration, since we are speaking to VDI, there is a VDI optimization selection that you can have here as well. It changes some of the algorithms on the back end to enhance VDI from an IOPS perspective, I believe. If you do want auto support, again, you can put in a sysadmin's contact information here, and it'll automatically generate support based on the information that you put in. Again, IP, hostname information, very important. You need your nodes to talk to each other. You need the controller VM, the management network to be configured to handle the communication. Management VLAN ID, very important as part of, or very important to maintain some isolations. There's some best practices around the HyperFlex storage platform and the network configuration as well. We can speak to later. If you do have proxy, you can have your proxy information here. Again, it's optional. And then, of course, the storage network, you want that specific storage VLAN ID identified as well as part of the deployment. So then we click Next, and these are the 3 nodes that we incorporated into HyperFlex when we did the device claiming earlier on in the description. We're going to give the cluster a management IP. So basically, it's all the management nodes will be reached via the management IP here. And then we are going to validate and deploy. And then basically this walks through the steps. This is where you can go grab your cup of coffee. You can, go put the dog in. Yeah.
This is a hypothetical situation. Please stay with us. But sorry, Brian. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So things are spinning up. The satellites are communicating and beaming information and forth, and then voila.
Absolutely. So basically, this goes through, walks through the steps. You can follow the steps. Again, if you wanted to take an opportunity, hypothetically, to go walk your dog, something along those lines, this would be a great opportunity to do that at the time of deployment when you're rolling this out. So that's pretty much the simplicity that customers can expect in deploying HyperFlex through Intersight. Any questions, Rob?
Not at this point. I'm going to let you, as we're talking to Michael, leaf through the Q&A and kind of clean up and add any additional color to what's been said there. I was just thinking as you were talking about if you wanted to go do that thing with the animal you were speaking of. I say it quietly because that's why I'm wearing headphones, and I turn down my external monitors. I don't want him getting any ideas just because you mouthed off about what we could do during certain times of the day, because he stares at me all day basically saying, how come we're not doing more since you're here so much?
Yeah.
Anyway, so with that, no, thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate that. And so let's move on to, we have you unmute, and Lindsay, hand the ball over to me, I believe, actually. And I will take over from the slides. But let's see here. On the agenda, we're going to hear from one of our peers, So I want to introduce Michael Rhodes. I've already teased him quite a bit here. Michael and I had a chance to talk prior to today, so I learned probably more about him than unfortunately you guys are going to learn today because he's worth time. Because I don't get to meet too many customers that are doing so many different things. Obviously, we're going to stick specifically to what has been talked about today that VJ covered in terms of HyperFlex and the scalability and the GPU support and the ways in which VDI can work in with this. But Michael, thanks for waiting and thanks for answering questions. I wonder, first of all, correct me in terms of if I'm pronouncing your company name correctly, but tell us a little bit about yourself and who you work for.
So thank you. I appreciate being here. So my name is Michael Rhodes. I am the IT manager for North American Hoganess. I've been in my role for almost 14 years, which has been a great experience for me. I've gotten to do, as you mentioned, tons with IT, expanded from, we'll say, the ground up. I've gotten to get into different technologies. Hoganess is a Swedish company in Hoganess, Sweden, which is in the southern part of Sweden. So it's a great company to work for. They have good global presence. They're around the world. We make iron powder. So my industry is in rough industrial manufacturing, right? We have powder metal in the air. We're making steel. So it's a rough environment. And talking more about like the VDI stuff, it was such a perfect fit for us because it's dirty. I could blow up power supplies like nobody's business, right? PCs were thick and dirty and really rough. And we had gone down the road of virtualization like everybody had with data centers. And it was just almost like a natural progression to go from what we had to the HyperFlex. And when you kind of start rolling in with VDI, you realize you can get even more benefits. Like the one thing was the GPU we talked about. And there's all kinds of neat products and just expandability you have with that. And it was really cool to go down that road. And it's like, to me, like I said, it was a natural progression on how I got to where I'm at today. But when one thing leads to another, it just like, you're like, oh, we can do this now. Oh, cool. And then you see it on like the floor, and then kind of led to, oh, wait a minute, our managers and salespeople can use it too. And it kind of like just the more you use it, the more you realize what cool features there were and stuff we didn't know about. Like we went down the road without GPU, found out we could add GPU, got a card, started playing with it, and started using things like CAD for it, or driving more monitors, which is like seems to be the thing of the day, right? Everybody, the single monitor has not cut it for a lot of people for a long time now, and 2 monitors no longer cut it. My programming guys, they're always like, hey, can I get 2 more monitors, or maybe I can get 4 monitors? And you know what? Now we can do that, which we couldn't do that before. So it's kind of neat how this technology has led us to that.
Well, give me a feel for describe your IT as best you can in a simple fashion so that anybody listening can say, yeah, that kind of mirrors what I'm doing or doesn't or something to that effect.
Okay. So honestly, if I got the question right, I think we're a small IT group. I'm the manager, and I have one system admin, and then we have a couple other guys doing system support kind of things like your junior admins and everything. So just really 2 guys doing most of the advanced networking and data center stuff, you could say. But we are a traditional, salary group where we have knowledge workers on one side, and then we have our union workers who are, not as tech savvy or tech needy as other groups. So from that perspective, it's, I think traditional business, we have accounting and finance and marketing and those kind of groups, and we help them out. And the other half is, like I said, our plant workers.
Well, so what led you to HyperFlex, and what were you doing prior to HyperFlex?
Well, we had a UCS with Fabric Interconnect with blades, and I think they were M2s and then maybe M4s. Maybe went to M4. Whenever they were coming due for refresh, we do leasing, which is great for Cisco because we get to do stuff all the time, which not gonna lie is nice, but it does keep us current. We had looked at HyperFlex right when it was brand new back then, a couple years ago, and we said, we're just not quite ready. I didn't know enough about it, to be honest. I was like, I don't understand what this really is, so I kind of said, not this time. But last year we said, wait a minute, I can take what I have now, or I have my blades, which I have a SAN sitting there, and it was a hybrid SAN. It wasn't all flash, but I was looking to go all flash. And from a cost perspective, I said, for me just to leave my blades alone even potentially and keep them, or go to M5s and then add a new SAN, which is all flash, I was looking at X dollars, which is up here. And I work pretty closely with my local Cisco team, and honestly, they're great. They were saying, hey, maybe you should take a look at HyperFlex again. And I was like, you know what? It's worth some YouTube videos. I watched a video with Rob in it at one point saying, hey, let's look at this thing called HyperFlex. And it really did. I'm like, wait a minute, I can take these, what I thought were smaller servers, and put them together and get a really cool big server. I'm like, this, simple terms. And then I found out I could add 4 GPU cards that instead of having just 1 or 2 in my blade, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I can have 4 and split that across my group. Which is going to really enable, more VDI and more GPU dedication for the CAD users, or driving more monitors, or using my programmers to do a lot of like .NET development. those kind of things that help them out. So, and then I look at the cost side of it. Obviously, the business says, hey, you have a budget, stay within the budget. I can go all flash, 4-node cluster of HyperFlex, and add the GPUs for actually less money than just going with a all flash SAN. So I'm like, well, win-win. And honestly, you add things like the reliability, the redundancy. It makes such perfect sense. I mean, not to knock the traditional blades that I had prior. I love those things too. But it just, for my environment, which is not huge, I'm not gonna lie, we're not a huge enterprise. It just made so much sense. And now I know that if I need to add things like memory or drives, I don't have to buy another server so much. I can just take one out of production, add more memory, add more CPU or storage on the fly. It's really cool.
Yeah, so that's interesting what you say about the cost perspective. It really that'll to simplify even further the bang for your buck. And as you're looking at the what do you get for the amount of investment then? Because you've always got to think, I'm sure like most of us, we've got to make a call, we've got to make a decision, and then we have to present it to other people because someone else is going to have to sign off on it. And a lot of times it's going to be someone that doesn't understand the details of the benefits and the things of which you have to live with on a daily basis. I'm curious, you mentioned running CAD programs on VDI, which is not something I hear all the time. I'm curious, what kind of how much VDI are you guys doing? Who are you using for VDI? And what are some of those bigger apps? How are you able to do that?
So we have different tiers. Yeah, like I mentioned before, we have our link clone groups who are just the regular log in, check my email kind of guys, email and internet, that kind of thing. And then we have the engineers. So our engineers do a little bit of design, and they're reviewing a lot of documents for maybe a new building we're building or a new process or piece of equipment in our plant, and they're making changes and everything. So those guys, some of them have VDI, and they're able to run Autodesk, Inventor, or just AutoCAD, depending on what they do. And we obviously give them the GPU. I mentioned my programmers. They need it for, I guess, I'm not a programmer, but those guys, they claim they need some GPU for
their
coding. Secretly, our young guys are out there playing PUBG or something. But and then our sales guys, there are, I could call my ultra mobile guys, right? They want the iPad that's all connected, and that's it. They don't want anything else. They don't want to be bothered with a traditional laptop. So those guys, VDI works great because all the processing power is obviously done at the data center, which I think BJ mentioned. Which is, if you think about it, that's the coolest thing ever because I'm not gonna lie, my sales guys have lost laptops, broke laptops. Oops, something happened. What do I do? I could literally say, hey, go to Best Buy and buy another iPad and put the Horizon app on there, and boom, you're back in there. You didn't miss a beat. I don't have to worry about people stealing the data out of it. It's so cool that it does that. But those are like the basic users. Then I do have some middle of the road users who are more like our salary accounting people, maybe, who just need compute a little bit more than our link clone, but they don't need anything special. But I mean, I think I kind of cover a fair amount of bases with VDI, and it's a solution that kind of can touch everybody if you want it to.
Well, you kind of answered this here, but I'm going to restate it just to make sure. But Craig is asking, what are you doing at the site level? Do you have servers, or is everything just going back to the data center?
We just have one at the data center. So it's just a server. It's four-node cluster of the servers. And I am running my my traditional servers on that same box. So, I mean, it's pretty capable. These boxes, they're C240s, I believe. Yeah. And they're very capable boxes for what they are. I mean, you can run your full domain, server applications there and have your VDI. Because prior, we did have separate blades. We did have 2 blades for our, traditional servers and then 2 blades for VDI. But now we've kind of merged them together.
Okay. Well, so, I'm curious, obviously, everybody's like, do we talk about this? Obviously, I think one reason to tune in, we're going to be doing more data center download series. And I was told that I might make a naked plea to tell your congressman to make sure that they use me as the host for these ongoing, because I really enjoy this. And frankly, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I'm going a little bit stir crazy, working from home. I believe you're working from home, of course, Michael. And it's going to be interesting over time. I think one reason to tune into a series like this is to watch and see either how long certain people, like my hair, might grow, or just how crazy that gleam in my eye gets as we move forward, and whether or not my dog is still around in the long run. But I'm curious, you're an Intersight user, and not just an Intersight user, you seem to be a happy Intersight user, and it seemed to play into, as we were talking before, I had kind of asked you about, what was reality like for you guys prior to, the shelter in place, or however it's, whatever it's called, that's kind of been affecting every community a little bit differently in terms of when they went into it. But how did things change when you were doing business before versus doing business now afterwards, and kind of what played into it?
Well, so our group, I mentioned I have a system admin. He actually has for years now worked as a teleworker. So, I don't have a cable guy. My server guy's actually not in my server building, which is odd to think about. Traditionally, you want him to be the cable moving around guy, but he lives in Baltimore. I live towards the Pittsburgh area, so our data center's in that area. He works there. With Intersight, he's now able to work completely, do everything remotely. I don't care if he's on VPN or VDI, however he wants to manage it. He can manage it from anywhere. He can even use his phone if he really was so apt to do it. But everyone had to go, right? I mean, we're a manufacturer. A lot of people have to be there, right? That's what it is. It's a very hands-on organization. And our salary workers were traditionally that way. They had to do their job. Accounting's office is right outside my office, and they're right there. And same thing for purchasing or any of the departments. And to be told they all have to go home and work, obviously, like everybody else, that was a big switch, right? And there was a lot of worries. Hey, can we support this? Or whatever. And yeah, that's one of the things with VDI is I told some users who had it, just take your zero client home. It'll connect over the internet because we are already doing that today, right? So they can get literally the full desktop experience at home without any kind of VPN or complexity. They're like, I just plug it in and sign in. I'm like, yes, you literally just plug it in and sign in, and I promise your experience will be no different. And some teleworkers are sales guys. Almost all of our sales guys already are remote. Nothing changed for them, right? They have a zero client with 2 monitors on their desk, and they just plug in as normal. So it's like, some of that's business as usual for some people, and obviously it was a little bit of a switch up. But I think when they heard I just have to plug it in, I don't have to know anything different to my normal day, got that little bit of IT shine, you could say. Where they're like, hey, that's pretty cool. We can just come
hey,
and
we take it wherever we can get them. Yeah.
Hey, I'll take my head patch. That's right.
Absolutely. Well, so tell me more about your experience with Intersight, and what has that done for you? How do you describe it?
So I like Intersight. I mean, the fact that I am like a network guy, right? So I've worked with TAC over the years with different cases and things like that. And when I saw Intersight, I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I do play with Meraki occasionally. So I'm like, call it, got the dashboard. The dashboards this is cool. The fact that I can see everything in such an easy way. I mean, UCS manager's cool and everything. I like it. It's traditional. I can dig into it and dive deep and I'm a deep dive kind of guy. But to be able to get that snapshot on my just website or webpage or browser is really cool. I really love that fact. And the one thing that I kind of really, really like is the fact that TAC is connected, right? I have spent time over the years pulling logs, right? How many times can I run a log file and just, get the file going and upload it to TAC? No problem with that. I don't want to read that log. That log's way longer. That's why, we have TAC. But the fact that I can just let TAC have that log automatically is like game changer. Not that I really need them too much, but honestly, to know that I don't have to sit there and spew out every log and never fails. I don't know a command that they want, and I'm like, oh, what is it? What do I need to do? I feel dumb asking those questions, but the fact that I can just open those cases automatically, or even that Intersight tells me certain things like, hey, your storage isn't where it needs to be, or you're going to run out of storage in so many days. You're like, wait a minute, that's pretty cool. And obviously, traditionally data center guys, we're looking at that hard drive light's red, or the traditional look and see, look and feel, and if you don't dive deep in all the time, you might miss something, and next thing you know, you wake up and you're like, something's wrong.
Yeah.
You don't have that with Intersight. Like, they're kind of telling you, hey, just a heads up, you might run out, or hey, you got an issue here, open this case. It's really, really intuitive. And honestly, it kind of takes a little bit of the complexity out that I'm used to, right? You almost think you're like, can it be this easy? And you're like, actually, now that I have it, I'm using it. I do. I think it's great. And then the other thing is, I just discovered the other day that there's a mobile app, which is super cool. Who thinks that a data center guy can't be having dinner with his family someday, again, out in a restaurant and literally just peeking on the data center on their phone? I mean, that's pretty futuristic in my opinion. Something I didn't think 4 years ago that I would say, you're not going to see that. That's not going to happen. The data center's tucked away deep and buried behind firewalls and things like that. But with Intersight, you get that view, which is pretty cool. So I'm a geek guy, and if there's a Cisco app out there, I generally, play with it over the years, and I was shocked that I didn't have that one already. Now I'm checking it daily just because I can.
I like geeky people. Yeah, and I love because what I feel like you're saying there, and it's something we're always striving for, and it probably rolls off marketing lips too quickly most times, but it's exchanging kind of a technology giving you time back. There's an exchange there that says if you're not spending time pulling logs or doing something manual that the system could be doing for you, then I think that's a smart use of technology. And the more we can do things like that, I think the better. Fair enough?
I would 100% agree with that. I mean, time is money. And, like I said, I have a small staff. And if I know that even my system admin has more time to help people or to be, just looking to make improvements, then we're going to be a better organization overall, saving that money or saving costs or, whatever we have to do today, especially in today's new environment. it helps now more than ever.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that you wanted to bring up in this specific topic? Because actually there's a lot more I want to talk to you about. And I want to let everybody know, by the way, it was not out in time for today, but very soon there's a not a white paper, but a customer case study that Michael has participated in prior to this event. And it's one reason we were able to get to know him a bit better. And it's one of these that's worth paying attention to, because there's a lot of other things beyond data center that Michael is doing, and he's pushing the creativity. You're a sponge for information, and you're willing to share it, which is also awesome. So thank you, Michael. And yeah, to the question I asked you a moment ago, was there anything else you wanted me to ask you?
No, I mean, we could talk for hours about this stuff if we wanted to, but no, if there's anything else, please let me know. I'd be happy to help or answer.
Well, thanks for your time today. Thank you also for answering questions. That was above and beyond. I appreciate that. Also, thank you, Brian Hilton. Thank you, VJ. Guys, this is the first in a series, and actually there's been a few data center download live events. They were first, though, coming from Cisco Live, I believe, but obviously we're all doing this from our caves at home, and I hope you enjoyed what we were covering today. Please do not hesitate to register. It's the same place to register all the time. It's cisco.com/go/DC webinars. The next one coming up is around, this is the big marketing title, Enabling Proactive IT in an Evolving Business Climate, or Cisco Workload Optimization Manager will be covered within that one. And that's coming up quickly. It's only a couple of weeks away, April 28th. And then right after that, Cisco Intersight 101, which actually is simple as it sounds. I don't know how we're going to fill a whole hour, but we'll fill as much as needed and not a moment more. But actually, there are a lot of great details to cover there. So hopefully we've piqued your interest a bit, but you can get more details there. Hopefully the questions have been answered. Please, there's actually a polling question up asking you what you'd like to see covered in the future. So I encourage you to let us know. We will seek to provide more information. We want to make it valuable for you. And so if there's something we're missing, something we could do better, then of course, let us know. But my name is Rob Boyd. It's my pleasure to get to host this for the data center team that I've so enjoyed working with over the years, and hope to see you guys quick in the future. Everybody stay safe, wash your hands for at least 20 seconds, and thank you so much for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day.